Elias was a man who trusted his horse, a powerful stallion named Titan. For 15 years, they had ridden the rugged mountain trails of Wyoming together. Elias knew every twitch of Titan's ears, every shift of his weight. But he had never known the horse to be truly afraid. That changed on a crisp autumn morning, on a trail they had ridden 100 times before. The path ahead was narrow, winding along the edge of a steep, rocky ravine. It was a familiar route, one that led to a beautiful meadow overlook. But as they approached a familiar bend, Titan stopped dead. He planted his hooves, his body rigid as stone. Elias urged him forward gently with his heels. "Come on, boy, what is it?" Titan didn't move. Instead, he took a shuffling step backward, his eyes wide, his nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air. Elias grew impatient. The sun was climbing, and he wanted to reach the meadow. He gave Titan a firmer kick. "Hiya! Move it!" In response, Titan let out a frightened snort and sidestepped nervously, his hooves dislodging small pebbles that skittered down into the ravine below. This was more than stubbornness. This was raw fear. Elias, however, was a man of logic. He could see the path was clear. There were no snakes, no predators in sight. The ground looked stable. The horse was just being difficult. "Don't be foolish," Elias grumbled, giving the reins a sharp, angry tug. And that's when Titan did the unthinkable. In one explosive, powerful movement, he reared up. It wasn't a playful gesture. It was a violent, desperate act of rejection. Elias, a master horseman, was caught completely by surprise. He was thrown from the saddle, landing hard on the dusty trail with a painful thud. The air was knocked from his lungs. For a moment, he saw stars. Anger, hot and sharp, coursed through him. He sat up, gasping for breath, ready to yell at the horse who now stood several feet away, trembling but holding his ground. But as Elias's vision cleared, his anger evaporated, replaced by a freezing, heart-stopping terror. The spot on the trail where Titan had refused to step, the very spot they would have been standing had he not been thrown, was gone. It happened in an eerie silence. The ground simply gave way. A huge section of the trail, weakened by recent rains in a way that was invisible from the surface, crumbled and plunged into the ravine below. A torrent of rock and earth cascaded hundreds of feet down, the sound echoing through the canyon a moment later like a roll of thunder. If Elias had been on that spot, if Titan had taken one more step forward, they would both be dead. There would have been no time to react, no chance of survival. Elias sat on the ground, his body shaking, his mind struggling to process the sheer, terrifying finality of what had almost happened. He looked at his horse. Titan was no longer trembling with fear, but stood watching him, his eyes soft. The horse hadn't been acting out. He hadn't been disobedient. With senses far beyond human perception, he had felt the instability of the earth beneath his hooves. He had sensed the micro-vibrations of a trail on the verge of collapse. His refusal to move, his violent rearing, it wasn't an act of aggression against his rider. It was a desperate, last-ditch effort to save him. When gentle warnings had failed, he had resorted to the only language that would guarantee Elias's safety: force. He had thrown the man he loved to save his life. Slowly, painfully, Elias got to his feet. He walked over to Titan, not with anger, but with a reverence he had never felt before. He wrapped his arms around the stallion's thick neck and buried his face in his mane. "You saved me," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved my life." The horse simply nudged him gently, a silent acknowledgement of the unbreakable bond between them. They turned around and took the long way home, leaving the treacherous path behind forever. Sometimes a violent rejection is the most profound act of protection, and the greatest trust is proven when instinct defies command.